At 82, I've lived a full life. I've raised a family, worked hard, made mistakes, and learned from them. But if there's one decision I could go back and change, it would be moving into a nursing home. I know that might sound surprising. After all, isn't that where we're supposed to go when we can no longer live alone? Isn't that the safe choice? That's what I thought too. My family meant well. They told me I'd be looked after, that I wouldn't have to cook, clean, or worry about anything. It would be easier, more comfortable. I trusted them. I believed I was making the smart choice. But once I stepped through those doors, I realized just how much no one had prepared me for what life in a nursing home is really like. The truth is, I lost far more than I ever expected. My independence, my routines, my privacy, and even parts of myself I didn't realize I'd miss until they were gone. It didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly. One day, I woke up and realized I wasn't living the life I had built for myself. I was just existing inside someone else's system. I'm not saying every nursing home is bad, and I'm not saying they don't serve a purpose. But I am saying this: before you or someone you love makes that choice, you need to hear the full truth, because once you move in, getting out isn't as easy as you think. In this video, I'm going to share 6 honest, personal regrets, things I wish someone had told me before I gave up my home, my space, and more importantly, my control. Some may surprise you. Others may feel uncomfortably familiar. But if you're considering a nursing home, I hope you'll stay with me. This might be the most important story you hear today. Regret. 1. Losing my independence. If you've spent your whole life making your own choices, big or small, this might be the hardest part to hear, because what no one really tells you about moving into a nursing home is that you're not just trading in your house, you're handing over your independence. And once it's gone, getting it back is harder than you can imagine. When I first moved in, I thought the changes would be manageable. A smaller space, a little more help with meals or laundry, nothing I couldn't live with. I figured I'd still live life on my terms. Wake up when I pleased, take a stroll outside when I felt like it, sip my coffee while reading the newspaper in peace. But that illusion faded fast. From the very first morning, I learned the schedule ruled everything. Breakfast came at 7:30 a.m. sharp. I wasn't even hungry, but if I missed it, I had to wait until lunch. Want to sleep in? Too bad. Staff knocks for medication, vitals, check-ins. Whether you're ready or not, your day starts when they say it does. That's when it really hit me. I was no longer in control of my own day. At home, I decided what I wanted to wear, even if it was just sweatpants and an old sweatshirt. I opened the windows when I wanted fresh air. I played music as loud or as soft as I liked. I chose whether I wanted to be social or simply enjoy the silence. Here, even a walk outside requires someone else's time and permission. And while the staff is kind, asking for help doesn't always feel like help. Sometimes it feels like asking for permission to live. I remember reaching for the book I had been reading before the move, but it wasn't there. My nightstand was different. My favorite chair, gone. The framed family photo I kept near my coffee pot, packed away in a box I hadn't opened. I was in a room that wasn't mine, following a routine I didn't design. It felt like being a guest in someone else's version of my life. Over time, you adapt. That's the quiet danger. You stop resisting, not because you're okay with it, but because you get tired of asking. You start telling yourself it's just easier to go along. And slowly, day by day, your sense of independence fades, not in some big dramatic moment, but in the tiny, invisible surrenders that add up. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home or helping someone else make that decision, ask yourself this: are you truly ready to give up the small freedoms that give life color and meaning? Things like deciding when to eat, when to rest, when to speak, or when to sit silently with your own thoughts? Because once you trade independence for convenience, you may find that you've lost the very things that made your life feel like your own. And the truth is, no amount of comfort or structured care can ever replace the deep satisfaction of being the one who decides how you live each day. So before you take that step, think carefully. Freedom isn't just about big decisions, it's about the little choices that remind you who you are. Regret 2. Feeling forgotten. One of the most painful things I've had to come to terms with wasn't the physical move to the nursing home, it was the emotional distance that followed. If someone had told me how quickly life outside would start moving on without me, I might have thought twice. I truly believed I'd still be part of everything, just from a new place. When I first arrived, my family promised to visit often, and in the beginning they did. My daughter came every Sunday. My grandchildren stopped by with stories from school, filling my room with laughter. They brought drawings, photos, little things that reminded me I was still in their world. For a while, I felt seen, still part of their rhythm, just at a distance. But then life got busy. My daughter called instead of visiting. The grandkids had sports, exams, jobs, and social lives. Holidays came with plans that didn't quite work out and promises to make it up next week. Weeks turned into months, and the visits slowed to a trickle. The silence between us grew longer than I ever expected. I still remember the first Christmas I spent alone. I had dressed nicely, even brought out the little decorative angel they gave me during arts and crafts. I waited all day, checking the hallway every time I heard footsteps, but no one came. That night I sat by the window and watched the snow fall, wondering when I had become just another name on the holiday card list. Someone they remembered more out of obligation than genuine thought. There's the truth most people don't say out loud. When you're in a nursing home, even the people who love you can start to forget how much you still need them. It's not out of cruelty, it's out of convenience. You're no longer part of the everyday picture. You're tucked away in a facility, safe, taken care of, in good hands. But the trade-off? You become easy to overlook, easy to postpone. There were days I didn't speak to anyone outside of the staff. There were birthdays when the only people who said happy birthday were nurses reading it off a chart. And every time I picked up the phone, debating whether to call my son, I hesitated. I didn't want to seem needy. I didn't want to be that call they had to squeeze into their schedule. So I said nothing. And that silence became my routine. One I never chose, but one that quietly chose me. If you're considering a nursing home for yourself or someone you love, I beg you, don't underestimate the loneliness. It's not always loud. Sometimes it comes quietly in the form of a missed visit, a phone that doesn't ring, or a weekend that feels just like every other day. Sometimes it's just the sound of everyone else's life moving forward without you. Ask yourself, how will you stay connected to the world outside? How will you keep the people you love close when distance and time have a way of making you disappear? Because in the end, being safe is not the same as being remembered. And when you're no longer part of the daily rhythm of your family's life, it's easier than you think to feel like you've simply faded into the background. Regret 3. Losing my sense of purpose. Before I moved into the nursing home, I had a reason to get up each morning. It didn't matter that I was no longer working or that my days moved slower than they used to. My life still had rhythm, still had meaning. I tended to my little garden, brewed my morning coffee just the way I liked it, sat by the window with the paper, watered my plants, and checked in on the neighbors. These weren't obligations, they were little joy. They gave my days shape. They gave me purpose. When I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was simply changing my address. What I didn't realize was that I was also giving up the routines and responsibilities that once anchored me. At first, it felt like a treat. No more scrubbing floors, no more meal prep. Everything was done for me. Laundry, meals, bed making. I thought I'd earned the rest. But slowly, the rest turned into stagnation. Within a few weeks, the days started to blend together. Without problems to solve or tasks to complete, time stretched out. Long, quiet, and hollow. I wasn't contributing. I wasn't needed. I wasn't creating. I was simply existing. I remember sitting in the common room one afternoon. Some residents were asleep in their chairs. Others stared at the TV with glazed-over eyes. The silence was loud. No conversations, no laughter, no purpose. It was then I realized I hadn't just moved into a nursing home. I had stepped out of the life I used to have and into something that felt more like a waiting room than a home. Down the hall lived George, a former carpenter. His hands were once calloused from decades of craftsmanship, building, repairing, fixing. He used to make birdhouses for his grandkids and furniture for his neighbors. But here there were no tools, no projects, no purpose. I once asked him if he missed working with wood. He gave a quiet nod and said, "I feel like I've retired twice, once from my job and now from life." That line stuck with me. It's a strange and quiet grief to feel useless. No one means for it to happen. The staff is doing their best, But when every part of your day is managed for you, it chips away at your identity. You start to wonder, what am I still good for? Who still needs me? If you're considering moving into a nursing home, ask yourself this: what gives your life meaning right now? Is it a hobby, a task, a routine, a sense of responsibility? And will that still be part of your life once you're there? Purpose doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be as simple as folding a towel, writing a letter, saying grace before a meal, or helping someone solve a puzzle. But whatever it is, don't let it go. Hold on to it with both hands. Because when purpose disappears, life doesn't feel like living, it starts to feel like waiting. And that waiting, it can stretch endlessly, leaving your spirit quietly fading long before your body ever does. Regret. 4. Declining health faster than expected. Before I moved into the nursing home, I wasn't in perfect shape, but I was doing just fine for my age. I could get around on my own, cook a meal, wash the dishes, even go for short walks in the neighborhood. My joints were a little stiff, sure, but I kept moving, and that movement kept me strong. My daily routines weren't grand, but they kept me on my feet. They gave me a reason to stretch, to bend, to stay active without thinking about it. I thought coming here would help me maintain my health, or maybe even improve it. After all, there were nurses on site, regular meals, and people around to help if I needed it. It sounded like a place designed to keep you safe and well, and for someone my age, that was appealing. I pictured myself staying active, maybe even joining a few exercise classes, walking the halls, socializing, keeping up with things I enjoyed. But no one told me that the more help you're given, the less you do for yourself. And the less you do, the faster you lose your strength. At first, it felt like a relief. I didn't have to stand in the kitchen anymore or take out the trash. If I needed something, I just pushed a button and someone came. It felt like care. It felt like ease. But slowly, that ease turned into weakness. I began to notice that my legs didn't feel as steady. My balance was off. Tasks I used to do without thinking, like standing up from a chair or walking down the hall, suddenly became tiring. Sometimes I'd catch myself hesitating before getting up, wondering if I needed to call for help, even when I didn't. And it's not just physical. When you're doing less with your body, your mind starts to slow too. The confidence I had in my own strength began to fade. I moved more cautiously. I said no to activities I would have enjoyed. I started to feel older than I was. The truth is, it doesn't take long to weaken when your environment is built for passivity. When meals are delivered, laundry is handled, and there's always someone ready to help you out of bed, your body forgets how to do those things on its own. Muscles shrink, stamina fades, and before you know it, the very independence you had hoped to preserve is slipping away, quietly, day by day. There was a woman named Alice who moved in a few weeks after I did. She was 81, sharp as a tack, and insisted on walking everywhere. "I'm not slowing down just because I'm here," she'd say. She even made a point to walk the hallway after dinner every night. But the longer she stayed, the less she moved. First it was occasional help, then it was a walker, then a wheelchair. One day she looked at me and whispered, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in 6 months." And I knew exactly what she meant. Being in a place designed to make life easier, it's easy to forget that the difficulty of everyday tasks is what keeps us strong. Once those little efforts are taken away, so is the opportunity to maintain the strength behind them. No one intends to decline, but it happens, almost invisibly. If you're considering a nursing home, ask yourself, will you still be motivated to move when everything around you is designed to keep you still? Will you take the long way to stay active when the easy way is always right there? Will you choose the stairs when there's always an elevator? Will you stretch, walk, and lift even when no one expects you to? Because in here, it's not sickness that breaks you down, it's comfort. And once your strength fades, getting it back isn't just difficult, it can feel almost impossible. Regret. 5 laws of privacy and dignity. One thing I never truly thought about before moving into a nursing home was how much I would miss my privacy. At home, even if it was just a small 1-bedroom apartment, I had my space. I could close the door, sit in silence, take a bath when I wanted, and enjoy the freedom of doing everyday things on my own terms. I never realized how much dignity lived in those little moments until I lost them. When I moved into the nursing home, that quiet personal space vanished almost overnight. My room, though clean and well lit, never felt entirely mine. Staff came and went, sometimes without warning, sometimes knocking but entering before I could respond. Even when they meant well, it was a constant reminder that I no longer had full control over my own environment. My life no longer felt like it belonged to me. It felt like it belonged to the system. The first time I needed help using the bathroom, I felt humiliated. I had been doing that by myself for over 80 years. Now I had to press a call button and wait for someone to come. Sometimes they were busy and I'd be left waiting, uncomfortable, embarrassed, and silently ashamed. They were kind, of course, professional, but it didn't change how it made me feel inside. Less capable, less human. Getting dressed was another matter. There were mornings when I needed help with buttons or socks, and while I was grateful for the assistance, I couldn't shake the sense of being exposed. There's a vulnerability that comes with needing help in your most personal routines. Having someone assist with something so basic strips away a layer of dignity you didn't even know was there, until it's gone. Then there's the issue of roommates. Not everyone gets a private room. I shared mine with a nice enough man named Charles, but he snored like a chainsaw and left his radio on late into the night. Privacy became something I had to ask for instead of something I naturally had. I had no say over when the lights went out or what noise filtered through the walls. Once, when I wanted to talk to my daughter on the phone, I had to whisper from the hallway, just to have a little space. And when you're constantly monitored, when every movement, medication, and meal is tracked, it's hard not to feel like a patient instead of a person. Even well-meaning staff sometimes speak to you like you're fragile or incapable. They ask, "Are we ready for our bath today?" Or, "Do we need help eating that?" Phrases that chip away at your sense of autonomy, even if said with care. Back home, I was the one who decided how my day would go. I opened the blinds when I wanted, ate when I was hungry, and didn't have to explain myself to anyone. Here, my life is a schedule: shower days, meal times, med passes. It's a system. And I understand the need for structure, especially in a place with so many people to care for, but the cost is the erosion of the very things that make you feel like yourself: choice, privacy, dignity. There's something sacred about being able to sit in your own space, on your own time, with no one watching. That sacredness disappears when your world becomes communal, monitored, and regimented. You adapt, but you feel the loss every single day. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself this: are you ready to give up the private moments that have quietly defined your life? Because once those boundaries are gone, it's not just your space you lose, it's a piece of who you are. And getting that piece back? That's not as easy as unpacking a suitcase. Regret. 6. Realizing it's harder to leave than you think. When I first moved into the nursing home, I told myself it was temporary. Just a trial, a way to get a little help while I recovered from a fall and got back on my feet. I remember saying, if I don't like it, I can always leave. That thought comforted me. It made the transition easier. But what no one tells you, and what I wish someone had warned me about, is that once you're in, getting out is a lot harder than it seemed. At first, everything felt new and uncertain, but I held on to the idea that I could go back home. That I would. I even kept paying the utility bills, just in case. But within a few months, things started to change. My house sat empty. My daughter began sorting through my things, insisting she was just helping. Furniture was moved. My favorite chair was sold. The fridge was cleaned out and unplugged. Every small action, well-meaning or not, made it a little less mine. One day I mentioned moving back home, and I saw hesitation in my son's face. "Are you sure, Dad? You've got everything you need here. It's safer," he said gently. I could tell he didn't think I could manage on my own anymore, and truthfully, part of me started to wonder the same. That's the trap. Over time, the very place you thought you'd just visit for a while starts to chip away at the independence you once had. You don't cook anymore. You don't clean. You don't walk as far or think about errands or bills, and without realizing it, you become less capable. Not because you've aged so much, but because you've stopped doing the things that kept you sharp, strong, and self-sufficient. And here's the kicker. People stop expecting you to return. Friends stop calling to invite you to lunch. Neighbors assume you've moved on for good. The mail stops. Your absence becomes normal to everyone else, even when it still feels temporary to you. And the longer you stay, the more temporary becomes permanent, without anyone ever saying it out loud. I've seen others go through the same thing. One woman came in for respite care after surgery. She swore up and down she'd be home in 6 weeks. That was 3 years ago. Her house was sold, her belongings boxed up. Now she sits next to me in the common room, looking out the same window every day, just like I do. The emotional toll is real too. You start to question yourself. Could I really go back to managing a house? What if I fall again? What if no one's there to help? Fear starts to whisper in your ear, and before long, that whisper becomes the reason you stay. You stop dreaming about home, you stop talking about when I leave, and start saying, this is just how it is now. If you're thinking about moving into a nursing home, ask yourself, do you have a real plan for getting back out? Are you prepared for how quickly things change once you're no longer in control of your own home? Because the biggest regret isn't just going in, it's realizing too late that you've given up more than you planned and that getting it back may no longer be possible. Looking back, I don't regret getting older. Aging has brought wisdom, perspective, and a deeper appreciation for life's simple joys. But if there's one decision I wish I had thought through more carefully, it's moving into a nursing home. I came here believing it would make life easier. I thought I was choosing comfort, safety, and support. And yes, those things exist, but they come at a price. What I didn't understand then was that comfort can quietly trade away your independence, that safety can sometimes mean surrendering your voice, and that once you give up the daily rhythms that make you feel alive, it's hard to get them back. This isn't about blaming anyone. My family meant well. They wanted to protect me, and I wanted to believe that this would be a new beginning. But for many of us, the truth is more complicated. The world outside keeps moving while we sit inside these walls, watching from a distance. So if you're standing at this crossroads, whether for yourself or a loved one, pause, ask the hard questions, explore every option. Because your home, your freedom, your choices, they matter more than you might realize. And most importantly, know this: it's never too late to reclaim your voice, to speak up for what you want, to say not yet. Because aging doesn't mean disappearing. It means living smarter, with courage and clarity. If this message resonated with you, if you found comfort, insight, or a little truth in these words, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. We're here to support one another, to share real stories, and to remind ourselves that even in our later years, we still have power, purpose, and a life worth shaping. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, stay thoughtful, and stay true to yourself. We'll see you in the next video.